Survival is not just about staying alive. It's about finding hope, healing, and strength. This is The Survivor's Voice. I'm your host, Angie Sedore. Before we begin, this episode may contain discussions of trauma, abuse, or other sensitive topics. Listener discretion is advised. We don't recommend listening to this show with young children present, and we encourage you to prioritize your well-being. Today on The Survivor's Voice,
I ultimately found myself laying on the floor, not knowing what I was going to do, how I was going to survive what I was going through. You're so broken.
Yeah.
We don't even know you anymore. He did take all of my childhood fears, but not just to me, he did it to our daughters.
welcome to The Survivor's Voice. We're here today with Brittany. She has graciously allowed us to just engage with her about her story and what she's been through and what she's overcome. And thank you, Brittany, for being here. I appreciate
Thank you
it.
for having me.
Yeah. First, I just kind of wanted to get to know you a little bit. Where are you at now? What do you do? Just kind of what does your life look like right now?
I am a single mama. I have two beautiful girls. My oldest is 13, going on 14, and my youngest is 8. I am a medical coder, so I do that remote, so I'm able to be a part of my girls' lives.
Love that.
We're all 3 in CrossFit. My oldest plays club volleyball, so they keep me very busy.
What was your life like, in the beginning with your family? And
My childhood was a little messy. My dad passed away when I was 8 years old. He was in and out of our lives, into drugs. So it was just my mom and my older sister and I. It was a very traumatic event in my life, and I didn't really realize that until I got older and started going to therapy. So my trauma started when I was 3 years old.
Okay.
It pinpointed it back to 3 years old. But in my childhood, I faced that, and then I had a pretty normal, after that. My mom remarried, amazing Christian man, worked so hard, gave us an amazing life. I played club volleyball, was in youth group. So I lived a little, normal life until I went into freshman year of high school.
okay.
And then I became extremely ill. My life was, I was in bed pretty much most of my high school.
What kind of illness?
It wasn't until recently, a few years ago actually, that they figured out what was wrong with me. I had endometriosis.
Oh.
So it controlled my life for 17 years.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So my childhood was pretty rocky, battled health, battled death, battled a lot of different things, but there was so much goodness in it. I'm extremely grateful for my stepdad who came in and, kind of put on that armor and went through life with us girls. When I was younger, after my dad's death, I was angry and, it was the new man in the house.
Yeah.
A lot of resentment, a lot of, cold shoulder, walls up, battling illness and losing friends and friends coming and going because you're, sick and a teenager and nobody understands.
No.
And no doctor would listen. And I was, all over California trying to get help, and there was just no answers. And I was just poked and prodded and pills shoved down my throat. And so
Yeah.
during that hard time of my life where I felt so alone again, I leaned on God.
Yeah.
And I became very, very close with God. And that kept me going for a very long time. So I'm incredibly grateful for being taken to church on days I didn't want to go, because ultimately it led me to youth group
Sure. Yeah.
where I built my relationship
Absolutely.
with God. I ultimately found myself laying on the floor, not knowing what I was going to do, how I was going to survive what I was going through.
What were you facing at that time?
I had found out my husband had been cheating on me for many years and that I was in a very abusive marriage.
How old were you when you met your husband?
I was 19. We started dating January of 2008, and we were married February 20th, 2010.
Okay.
Very quick.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah,
and did you guys have kids right away?
I was told I would never have kids, and I got pregnant with our oldest. It was a shock. I was in school to be a court reporter, and I was super sick, and I couldn't figure out what was going on, and I was pregnant. So I had her. She was due 1 year after we were married. She was due 13 months after our marriage.
Wow.
Yeah, our wedding.
So was he always abusive? Did that kind of creep in? Like, when did you start seeing signs?
Always yes.
Always, yes.
When did I start seeing the signs? Not until the blinders were off a few years ago.
Oh, just a few years ago.
Yeah. Like there
gosh.
were things that I knew were not right.
Yeah.
And things were brought to my attention by many friends, many
What types
family
of
members.
things?
Just the way he would become angry when he drank and was just very mean and just put me down, and, you know, but then build me up, but then put me down in front of people.
Yeah.
It was so confusing because he was so kind and so nice, and so fun, and you know, like I just fell head over heels in love with this man, and so I feel like, you know, like we were in a trip to Mexico. Well, a few months into our relationship, I think it was April, we got together January. He took me on this trip to Mexico.
Yeah.
I'm 19, of course. I'm
Oh,
like, heck
yeah.
yeah. Let's go. Well, all we do is drink anyways. So
Right.
this is going to be fabulous, right? So we go, and I get alcohol poisoning.
Oh, dang.
So I'm sick on the bathroom floor in this, you know, place where I'm just on this tile floor, sick. You know, you're just puking, just dizzy. And he's just standing over me, yelling at me, just screaming at me, like, get off the floor. What's wrong with you? You know, and I'm just like, I don't know. You know, I don't know what's wrong with me.
Right.
Like I drank too much. You know, I didn't know I had drank so much that to the point where I was actually ill.
Yeah.
So just things were just, you know, bits and pieces. But then after that, it was, you know, we were out on a boat on a dinner pirate cruise, and how fun is this? And you know, and so it was quick to change. The behavior was quick to change. And so it took me a very long time to figure out what was actually being done.
Oh, yeah. Okay. That makes sense. Mm-hmm. So how long have you guys been divorced?
January of 23 is when he wanted the divorce. And
He wanted it.
yeah. So, yeah, it was actually, I had found out he was cheating on me. And
How did you find that out?
I had HPV.
Oh,
So what happened was I ended up in March of 2020. I had surgery for endometriosis. I finally found a doctor that healed me.
Yeah. It's come a long way.
Yeah.
Thank God.
Yeah. So I was living about 29 days a month in excruciating pain, like deliberating, blackouts, convulsions, from mid back to ankle. I had gone through that, and so I knew what pain was, right?
Sure.
And I was pain-free for the first time my entire adult life.
After your surgery.
After my surgery.
Yeah.
And I had started functional medicine for my hormones and, you know, changed my lifestyle. And so I started having pelvic pain. And I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
Like, this is not okay. What's happening? And so I go to my functional doctor, and I was like, start telling her, like, hey, I'm having like, and I have one ovary, my right ovary, and that the pain was on that right side. So I was like, oh my gosh, you know.
Oh, God.
The left one was completely black, so this one, something's wrong with it now. And that's not even what the case was, you know. And a few weeks later, she comes back, and she's like, you have HPV. And I was mortified.
Oh, my God.
I carried so much shame and guilt with that up until a few months ago. And realizing that it's out of my control. Right before I found out, we went on this trip up to Silver Mountain. And we rarely got to do much alone because we moved up here with no family, no friends, and I'm a stickler on leaving my kids with strangers. So his parents came up, and we went up to Silver Mountain for a night. And he expected, you know, he had this whole whatever in his mind that was going to happen. And I didn't feel good. I had horrible pelvic pain. I just didn't feel right. And we fight. You know, we go to dinner. I wasn't wearing what he wanted me to wear. He wanted me to dress provocative. I wanted to be comfortable. I didn't feel good.
Yeah.
I was exhausted. You know, I finally get a minute away from the kids.
Oh my gosh.
You know, I'm exhausted.
Sure.
And so he was already upset with me, and I just wasn't giving him the attention and affection he needed. And I was in pain. And the morning we were getting ready to leave and come back to town because our oldest had a thing at school. And he's standing there just in the meanest tone, turns to me and is like, sex first, then I love you. You know, I'm sitting there in pain, not knowing what's wrong with me. And that's the type of supportive husband I have. I was so infuriated.
Oh, God.
And I was just like, oh, let me back it up for a minute. So between January and starting to have pelvic pain in May, I had started EMDR therapy for my father's death. And so that led to my therapist. I thought our next topic was going to be medical trauma, so much of it.
Sure.
And she was like, well, actually, we need to bring to your attention the amount of abuse that you're under from your spouse. I was blown away. No, I
Never crossed your mind?
Never. I had my childhood best friend. She was always like, Brittany, you're a battered wife. Like, this is not right. I had family that was like, who are you? Like, what's wrong with you? Like, you know, not what's wrong with you in a mean way, but it's just like, what's wrong? Like, you're not the same bubbly, fun, loving, you're still a loving person, but you're just, you're so broken.
Yeah.
We don't even know you anymore. And so it was brought to my attention multiple times, but I had these rose colored glasses on that painted this man into somebody that he was not and never will be.
Yeah.
And so it took me a lot of work to realize that. But in between January and May, I had already been dealing with these emotions and pretty much going crazy when he was at work, trying to find pieces and puzzle pieces together of our life. Like, because I was realizing everything was a lie. Everything was manipulation. I was gaslit. I was brought to Idaho, not for, you know, the calling on my husband's heart from God to come here to move our family here. I was brought to Idaho because my husband was selfish and he needed to get us wherever he needed to be to continue to live the lifestyle that he lived and hide whatever he was hiding. And so my whole world came crashing down, and I still had to compose myself because he didn't know that I knew this. So then I go away on this weekend with him. So yes, I'm exhausted mentally, obviously.
Sure. Yeah.
And then in pain. And so that is when I found out that I had HPV from my husband, and it didn't just stop there. It was a just trickling effect of just lies, and everything was turned around on me.
Of course.
Every single thing. I was like, who is this person?
My God.
Like, you know, I don't know who this person is. That didn't work. I stayed home. You know, I stayed home and I did everything so he could get to the top of his career. And I was so proud of him. You know, I wanted to support him. I wanted him to make it. You know, he had these goals and he wanted to be something more than just an operator. And like, he just, you know, and I wanted to support him in so many ways. And so I got an ultimatum when we had our youngest, and I was in school to be a stenographer, court reporter. I was almost done, super hard. And it was, this is too much for me. This baby and my work schedule. So you either need to quit school.
He told you that?
Yeah. You either
too much
need,
for him.
It's too much for him. He worked long hours, shift work, and that was always at the top. I work shift work. I'm exhausted. I'm this. And I had an ultimatum. Do I want a husband and a baby or a career?
Wow.
And that was what I was faced with. And obviously I chose my baby that I told I was never going to have. Like, of course I'm going to choose this precious baby.
Yeah.
Like, so I gave up school. You know, it was always, I told you could do whatever you want, whatever makes you happy. You know, I support you. But it was never really truly support. It was always, yes, you can do this, but I'm going to make your life living hell while you try to figure it out. And so I did figure it out. And I met this woman and I went back to school to be a medical coder. She owns a school and she's been a saving grace in my life. And, she actually ended up being my best friend. And she gave me this, you know, stuff to start the school, and I started it. And my mindset was, we're always pinching pennies. And I don't know why. You're very fortunate for the job that you have, you know, to be able to support a whole entire family and the wife be able to raise the babies at home and you be able to have this lifestyle. You're doing pretty well. But everything was always tight. And I was just like, okay, well, if I want to see my family, I'm going to need extra money. Like, you know, they're from California.
Sure.
So I found this, I was like, I need something to do that I can do that's remote, where it's not controlled. Yeah. I need to be able to get the kids on the bus at the driveway and sit down and work. So I started doing that. And during that time of finding out everything and trying to piece together this person that I didn't know and realizing that I was abused and processing everything and raising two little girls on my own because he's obviously not emotionally available. Yeah. And so I ended up going through school, and that kind of landed the girls and I opportunity and confidence to take a step out. So for the most part, I was always, you know, home.
Did he ever get physical?
No. He was sexually abusive.
Oh, like forced sex?
Yes. I thought about this for a very long time because I'm like, what is physical abuse? Because to me, my whole life, physical abuse is somebody punching you in the face. Sure. You know, slamming you against the wall. So I never really thought, well, sexual abuse is physical abuse, especially sexual abuse when you're battling a chronic disease and you're in so much pain, you have tears running down your face.
And he's still...
And it didn't matter because his needs still needed to be met. And it was easier for me to keep my mouth shut and bend over than to have to hear what I would have to deal with. You know, I'm not good enough. I don't love him. I'm not attracted to him. You know, you don't meet my needs. Like everything was always centered around sex.
Yeah.
Everything.
Is he a sex addict?
Yes.
Sounds like
so he doesn't believe it. Crazy, right? Our marriage counseling ended with, I will no longer see you as a patient. You know, I will see her, but I will not see you until you seek the medical help that you need. You need sex addiction therapy. Yeah. He went twice. And that was him trying. And if that's him trying, then, you know, that's what you got. But it wasn't enough, obviously. Yeah. And he truly believes that there's nothing wrong with him and that I destroyed his life and that all the things that he did to me, I deserved.
Wow.
I deserved him forcing himself on top of me because I wasn't meeting his needs.
Wow.
You know, and what the sick thing with people like this is, you know, and it was two very traumatic times in our marriage where he did something to me. So the first was forcing himself on top of me. I was suffering postpartum depression. I was working at that time. I had a 5-year-old who didn't love me anymore because we had a new baby that I fought very, very hard to have. Yeah. She was a twin. I lost one of them.
Oh,
I
my
miscarried
God.
before that. I had the pregnancy where it's the false pregnancy. Like there was just so many things that it just failure after failure after failure. And I had this little girl wanting a baby sister. During that time, I had this little girl who was just, you know, struggling. She'd been the only one for 5 years. So I had that on my plate. I had postpartum depression. I had endometriosis and I didn't know that I had that. And that's what was destroying my insides. I was working. I didn't want to have sex. I was tired. It had nothing to do with him. It had nothing to do with me not loving him, me not being attracted to him. Nothing. Yeah. And I still picture him getting on top of me until he finishes and then rolling over. And for the longest time I battled with God, like, you know, why do you want me to share this? Because these are the most vulnerable pieces of me that I have spent years grasping and putting back together and just trying so hard to be the strong woman for my daughters. And I'm like, why do you want me to take these pieces and give them to the world? Like, this is a very hard thing to do. Yeah. And I've realized that this behavior is happening there's so many women. And so one of the things that they do, you know, these toxic men, is after he finishes, he rolls over and then yells at me for having to rape his own wife.
So it's your fault.
And then, like, that's not enough. So you're raped. Well, okay. And to me, I couldn't justify it as rape because I was like, well, he didn't tie me down. He didn't put tape over my mouth. It wasn't a stranger. And so I was always like, you're fine, you're fine, you're fine. But the nastiest part of it is when I had to hold him.
You had to console him?
While he cried for raping me. And then I had to get up and take care of the kids and go on about my life. And that same exact toxic pattern came around when I'm sitting there doing schoolwork and he comes home from work because he was so afraid that I was going to show up to his work and just destroy him. And because we're sitting there texting, you know, back and forth about this HPV thing. And he's just trying to come up with lies and just all these things and just, you know, you did this and you did that. And I'm just like, whoa, you know, so he comes back to the house and I'm sitting there doing schoolwork. And it's not just, I'm cheating on you one time, like, and it was pretty much our entire marriage. And it was massage parlors and paying for sexual acts and paying to perform sexual acts on others, and not just women, men as well. And
really, how did you find all that out?
So I start like confronting him about things, and things start coming out, and I'm like, if you want to save this marriage, get a lie detector test. Little did I know that pathological liars doesn't really help you. But it got to the point where it got him to come out with truths. And so that's how I found out. I mean, literally up until I'm driving into the parking lot of this lie detector test place, he's calling me, frantically calling me over and over and over, you know, and I'm just like, what? You know, like, well, we're going to this place and, well, you know, and one time I let a lady sit on my face at the massage parlor, you know, and I'm just like, what the heck? So
like he got dark into his addiction.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I had, when during the time of searching, in the house, I had found a pamphlet. And it was when I was living in California still with the girls, and he was here working. It was only a few months until we could transition because our oldest was in school. But there was a little pamphlet in like a work bag, and it was for addiction classes here in
Like
in Coeur
SAA?
d'Alene. Sex,
Oh my
alcohol,
God,
you know.
okay.
And so he was aware.
Yeah.
He was doing things. He would go out to strip clubs. You know, when he was here, I had found out, and I was back home with the girls. He, you know, blackout drunk, didn't know how he got home, peed all over his computer that he just
Oh my
bought.
gosh.
You know, like, and we're trying to put pieces together to move here, and he's just out blowing money and acting. You know, which you know he ended up living in like a basement of somebody's house, like a VRBO. It was a very short-lived time. We were trying, you know, to get our stuff here. It was just, you know, a lot
Yeah.
to move out of state.
Yeah. It
And
is a lot.
so, yeah. And so during that time, he was only here, I don't know, from March to May, mid-March to mid-May. So during that time, the girls and I came back in April to look at houses. And I had found in his phone talking to his friends about how he was at the strip club and some lady offered him a blowjob at the, you know, and I'm just like, what is this?
Yeah.
You know, and of course it's turned around. And it was just a continuous toxic cycle of this same fight.
Yeah.
Over and over and over again.
I'm really grateful that you're telling your story because you're right. Like a lot of people go through these things and a lot of women go through these things.
Mm-hmm.
And just like you, they think it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Or you go into survival mode. And so you just trick yourself into believing that this is normal,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and so it's not.
No, it's not. And I realized that. And I realized when I was crying on the floor of the closet, praying God would take my life because I was never enough for him. And it didn't matter. I tried everything and I was never enough. And, you know, he was always looking online, looking at other women, following old girlfriends, Craigslist ads for women that are just meet up and have sex. Like he was always searching and always showing me, you know, like, oh, well, look at this woman, and you know, you should have your nails this color,
Oh
your
my
hair this
gosh.
color, you should dress this way. So it wasn't until recently, a few years ago, that I started actually buying clothes because I liked them,
Yeah.
not because I was worried if my husband would think I was attractive
Like
enough in them.
you didn't have your own identity.
Yes. I was just broken, completely broken. I had no idea who I was. Like I lived to get his approval, and and it was the broken little girl in me, and I just wanted to be enough.
Yeah.
And I was never enough for him, and I will never be enough for him, and nobody will ever be enough for him, because when you have that deep of a hole in your heart,
No.
you can't. You just keep shoving people in there, and
Yep.
it just is
Using people, and yeah.
It's so toxic.
It is. Do you ever have hope that he will get the help he needs?
Oh, I pray for him every day. That's the father of my girls. And, you know, one thing I said to him when all of this came about, when he came in there and I started finding out all these things.
Yes.
I had to hold him while he sat there. My whole world had fallen apart. And I had to hold him while he sat there and cried to me about the things that he did to me. And I had to be strong enough to console him and build him up so that I was mentally in a safe place, I guess is how I justified it. Because normally you would just be like, I'm out. After that, he left and went out drinking and never came back. That night he stayed out, and he came back that morning. His phone was still giving him directions how to get to the house because he was drunk. He's like, I want a divorce.
Because he's been found out.
Yeah. And that was the second time he told me he wanted a divorce. The first time, we were living in his parents' back house. We were remodeling our house. I was 8 months pregnant with our youngest. And he went out. We were living in the back house, so it was like a mattress in like kind of like a studio, I guess, you know. So it wasn't like there was bedrooms with beds, and there was a mattress on the floor.
Yeah.
And so I was 8 months pregnant, and so I went and stayed at my mom's house, which was right down the street, with our youngest. And so he took that as an opportunity to go out, and he didn't come home. And I went to the back house the next day to get something, and he wasn't there. And so I had to go around town and find him. And I'm 8 months pregnant, and I pick him up at his friend's house, drunk. And he's screaming at me in the car. I can vividly remember it, punching my dashboard. I effing hate you. I want a divorce, you know. And so when he said it the second time, I was like, I'm done.
Yeah.
You know, and gathering the kids, like, we're doing this. I did. And that day, the marriage counselor that we'd been trying to get into called. right? The Christian marriage counselor. So I'm like, all right.
Oh my God.
So I hung on for longer.
Of course.
Yeah. And we went through marriage counseling, and that's how it ended up like, you need help and I'm not going to seek, help you anymore. Like there's a dead end here. So I had lived in the spare bedroom for a whole entire year separate, then moved out. So like he wanted a divorce, and then I waited around like a whole nother year hoping he would change.
Yeah.
But I ended up writing him a letter, and I was so scared. And it was just pretty much like black and white. Like when you do the work, people can see it. Yeah. When you do that real raw work that hurts, that breaks you, that has you on the floor crying for months after months after months because you have so much brokenness, people can see that change in you.
Yep.
There is no change in you. And I was like, so it's time for us to go our separate ways. But I was giving him the opportunity to use that to fix himself.
Yeah.
And I truly believed to my core that letter was going to be what saved our family, because the last thing I wanted was a divorced family for my girls. I went through that. I fought so hard and held on for so long. And he comes back. I laid on the bed. He was on night shifts. And so he came home, whatever, came back into the room and was like, I want a divorce. And that was the third time. And it was like a knife in my back. It took my breath away. And it was the hardest blow I've ever had in my life. And I've faced a lot of things. And it was like the ultimate feeling of betrayal. Like, not only are you this person that I don't know. Yeah. And I'm trying to piece you back together to save our family and our girls' lives. Yeah. Like we already uprooted them and moved them here. Took all their family away that they were so close with. Like we took everything from them. Yeah. And so I'm just scrounging, trying to save what I could. And he just was like, I'm out, I'm done. But he wouldn't leave the house. So then I am, barely making, I don't even know if I was working yet. I don't even know if I was done with school yet. And if I was probably making $1,000 a month, finishing school, learning how to code charts. And he's like, I'm not leaving my effing house, And I'm like, wow, okay. Well, I have no family, no friends, no money, because the bank account always seems to be extremely low. So what am I going to do? What do I do with these kids? And it got to the point where my oldest daughter was begging me, please leave, Mom, please. I cannot do this anymore. And I'm just like, but in my mind, I was trying to save everything. Yeah. I'm trying to grab everybody and put them in the basket and save them. And to her, she's just like, we got to go. Yeah. And so at that point, I had no idea what to do. Like total faith, and doors just opened, and there was a girl in my small group, and she was like, hey, my dad has this condo, you can stay there for a week with the girls while you figure out what to do. And so I packed my bag, and that was my first I can do this. Wow. And God's opening doors, I can do this. And the girls and I went, and it was a week stay, and in that week I tried to figure out what I was going to do. Yeah. And take care of these girls. And it ended up being, I was so, it sounds so materialistic, but I was just so comfortable being where we lived. Sure. In that area, very small proximity, because that's all I knew. Yeah. I came from California, where I lived there until I left. Right. I had no idea. I didn't know any different. And so I was so afraid to move across the 95. It was like the biggest deal, Sure, and I'm just like, but what if I'm not safe and I don't know anybody and I don't have a neighbor? And I ended up in that condo. There was a townhouse that was right next door to it. And so I felt comfortable enough, because I had that week stay in that area. I felt safe enough with my babies that the door opened, and it just happened to be the lady that I became best friends with, who she rented from when she moved here. Oh, wow. And so, because I was like, well, I don't have all the things to rent a place. I just was a stay-at-home mom. Yeah. I don't have anything. I don't know. I just feel like you have to be such a big girl to go do these things, and I was just beaten down to believe that I was just the stay-at-home mom. And, you can't do things without me. Wow. You need me. I'm your pillar of strength. And and so moving across the 95, that was a big deal for me. Yeah. It was a very short drive, but you did it. It gave me confidence. Yeah. It gave me confidence. And during that time, I didn't even know how I was going to rent the place. I didn't have money. He was definitely not going to give me any. And my friend ended up giving the girls and I a loan to get into the townhouse, and that's how we started off our little journey. But then right at that time, I was banking on our house selling. Yeah. I had pictures were going to be taken, and the house was going to go on the market that week, and that pictures were being taken Monday. And I get a phone call Sunday. Was sitting having a wellness bar right here in Hayden with one of my friends. My daughter calls me because it was his weekend. You know, we already had come up with a plan.
Yeah.
It was his weekend. And so my daughter calls me, my oldest, and she's like, Mom, the house is on fire.
What?
And I was like, I thought she was joking. Like, I'm like, you're full of it. Like, what are you talking about? And I could just hear the sheer panic in her voice. So I go from,
She was there?
They had just drove up. So they went to church, and it just so happened that day while they were at church which was normal. He normally didn't go to church. He went to church if I went to church.
So it's kind of strange.
Yes.
Like suspicious.
Very strange.
Yeah.
And during that time that he was at church, he took it upon himself to take a video of inside the church building of the worship music.
To prove that he was there.
Uh-huh.
Oh my God.
But yeah, so I get to the property, and the house is just blown up in flames.
What the
just
heck?
Burning. It was like some category that's not it. There was multiple fire stations. The road was blocked off. The cops were everywhere. Like, it was just a big deal. Very traumatizing. So I was planning on being able to provide for my daughters, and I, with this money that I was
Of course.
waiting for, because how else am I going to provide for my kids when I just started working, barely make any money, and he controls the bank accounts. So right before the house blew up, the bank account went down to I don't know, he was depositing like $300 out of his checks, $80. So I had this boost of confidence, and I'm like, I can do this. I'm across the 95. Like, I'm working.
Yeah.
Like, I can make this. I can do this. And then boom, the house blows up and burns down.
Did they ever find out what the cause of the fire was?
They didn't, and it was an open investigation for a very long time for arson. I was in and out of the detective's office being drilled on my ex-husband, which was a whole nother experience.
Oh my God.
Like, what in the heck is happening, and I truly didn't believe that
he was capable of doing that?
Yeah. My neighbors, they had written text message that she sent me for trial, because I ended up going to trial. And they truly in their hearts thought that he killed the kids and burnt the house down.
Oh my God.
Because he was so angry that whenever they were around him, that is how they truly felt, is that I destroyed his life. I took everything. And they thought, that is truly what they thought. And
wow.
It blew my mind. I was scared for a very long time, because I realized what he had done is he had taken my deepest childhood fears and trauma of my dad leaving, us getting groceries, cans of beans dropped off because we couldn't eat, my mom sleeping on a couch bed, my sister and I's bedroom was a closet. We had bunk beds in a closet. He took those deepest fears of mine. In that is when I realized is that he did take all of my childhood fears, but not just to me, he did it to our daughters.
Yeah.
He took the money. He would not leave the home. He would not give me what was rightfully mine from the insurance company to feed our daughters and keep a roof over their head. Thank God I had started CrossFit, and there was just all these amazing people in this community that gave me resources that kept a roof over our head for 6 months. Our rent was paid just out of nowhere.
Oh my gosh.
And hundreds and thousands, just thousands of dollars in gift cards to feed my children. And then I would get a text from him. So I have half a container of strawberries. Do you want me to drop that off for you? I had to take him to temporary orders 3 times in court just to get what was rightfully the girls and I's. He whatever he could do, I feel like he just full force was like, I'm going to destroy this woman. And God was like, no, you're not.
Yeah.
You can try, but you're not. There were very many times that I didn't think I was going to make it. But yeah, I ended up in the psychiatrist's office, which ended up being a blessing because he walked me through some of the darkest days of my life and kept me afloat. And in that is a lot of reassurance came from, a healthcare professional validating, you were abused. You have PTSD.
Yeah.
You were so abused, Brittany, that you have PTSD. And, I'm shaking. I don't anymore. I've worked through a lot of trauma, but my kids would be like, Mommy, you're shaking and jumping out of bed.
Oh my gosh.
Because it was just coming out of me. The trauma was just I was finally safe enough that it just blew my mind that I was that abused and I didn't even know it.
Yeah.
I would hear his truck tires coming down the road from work and hives, welts.
Oh my God.
Cover my body from my neck down. And, he would come home and he'd be like, what do you have those for? And I had no idea. I'm like, what? I went to the doctor. I'm like, I keep getting these hives and these welts. Like, what's wrong with me? I got COVID or something. Like, I truly was like, they say all these weird things happen, so I didn't know. But yeah, once I went to the psychiatrist, I realized, like, holy cow, like, it's because my body is freaking out because it hears his boots on the floor or his tires on the driveway or his voice. And it's just like, that is the amount of trauma that, women are living with day in and day out.
And they don't even know.
They don't even know it.
Yeah.
They don't even recognize.
Yeah.
And it's the saddest thing. It is so heartbreaking because you're worth so much. Like, like God loves you. Like, you are capable of escaping that.
Yes.
And I remember just the sense of hopelessness of, I'm not strong enough to do that. Like, I can't do that. And God's like, you're going to do it. And then you're going to talk about it.
Yeah.
So get over yourself because it's not about you.
Oh my God.
I
know.
We've had a lot of those talks of, me coming to him with my vulnerable broken pieces and me having to learn that this is sharing my story, my testimony is not about me. And it is about what I can do to help other women and glorify God during that time.
Yeah.
Because, without God, the girls and I wouldn't be where we are. And we are it's hard still, but we are in such a good place. And there's still things that are brought up to my attention that God's like, hey, this is broken in you. Like, you need to fix this. And I still have to face those. And there's days where I cry and my girls are like, are you okay? But he's brought us so far. Like, how do you go from knowing nobody, having nothing, to completely creating a life with just the most real, raw, beautiful people that God has put in our lives, and just people that love us for who we are. And it's just been such a humbling experience. You grow up in these small towns and you think you have so many people on your side and just so many friends, and you all party together, and you're just the best of pals, and you go on all these vacations. And when shit gets real, that's when you find out who's on your side,
100%.
And it was just at that time when I realized, like, that was all, like, God is stripping me of everything. All the fake people, all the fake love, all the just toxic people, just everything that I thought was just so important in life.
Yeah.
And it just is so humbling.
What would you tell someone, a woman that's maybe even a man that is going, because men go through this too. What would you tell them to give them hope?
Don't lose your faith. You have to have faith. Like, on the floor, surrendering every last bit, not here, here's half of it. You have to wholeheartedly surrender everything to God, every bit broken piece that you won't want to. And if you don't, you're not going to get the doors open and make the strides that you need in life, because you're only harming yourself by not healing the most broken parts of yourself.
Yeah.
And when you give that to God and you have that faith, he will carry you through your darkest days. The days where your husband's on top of you, the days where you're in the closet crying in the corner saying, God, take my life. The days when you're so sick, you're in the bathroom on the floor slitting your wrist because you don't want to live anymore, because you don't understand what is wrong with you. Those darkest days where you have $0 in your bank account and you don't know what you're going to do. God will provide for you, but you have to have faith. That is the only thing that will carry you through.
Yeah.
There are so many women out there, and men, and I know it's men too, that need that hope.
Yeah.
And if people keep their mouths shut, nobody's going to get help. When you do the work and you surrender and you put in that that work that just beats you up, you come out of it with, a different hope and different outlook on life and people.
Yeah.
I mean, I've stayed, to myself for a long time because I've had to do so much inner work to heal from the toxic people in this world that have broken me.
I'm really grateful that you shared your story today.
Thank you.
I know it's going to help a lot of people.
I hope it does.
It is.
But if just it can reach one woman or one person runs to God with their arms open, I've done what God asked me to do. It's a lot.
Yeah. Life
lot.
is a lot.
Life is a lot.
Yeah.
Very humbling.
Yeah. And it's what you decide to do with it.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thank you.
Much.
Safe Harbor is dedicated to helping survivors of trauma find healing and restoration through support, resources, and community. They provide hope for those affected by human trafficking. Visit safeharborforfreedom.com to learn more or support their mission today. Thank you so much, Safe Harbor, for supporting the survivor's voice. Next week on The Survivor's Voice.
A lot of my childhood was very foggy up until probably 22 years old. It's hard because I think when you're raised in a certain way, we're all raised very biased and closed-minded in a sense because we only know what we know. And that's why I think I was so scared to be imperfect. And that's why it caused me so much stress.
Thank you for joining us on The Survivor's Voice. I'm Angie Sedore, reminding you that every survivor's story matters, including yours. If you or someone you know has a story to share, you can contact us at booking@thesurvivorsvoice.net. Your voice deserves to be heard. If you enjoy the survival stories we share, we would love it if you gave this channel a follow and a 5-star rating. No matter how dark the journey, the light of resilience shines brighter. Thank you for listening. If you know someone who would benefit from hearing this story of survival, please share this powerful testimony with them. A heartfelt thank you to our incredible listeners for your unwavering support and to the survivor community for your courage and resilience. You are the heart of this podcast. Special thanks to our producer and editor, Christina Elder, and to Dan Wise with Wise Media Studios for bringing these powerful stories to life. Your dedication makes The Survivor's Voice possible.